So I'd like to introduce Ed Giles. We've gotten to know Ed, and I have to say we've gotten to love Ed since he first contacted us about, well, over a year ago now, asking if we're still looking for recovery stories, and we're always looking for recovery stories. So we were delighted when Ed agreed to share his, and that's on our YouTube channel if you want to take a look at that later. And we've gotten to know Ed over that time and learned about his work with Action for Pain and Health All Round in Edinburgh, and where he works with Barbara and Louise. And I've gone and visited him at the pain cafe that he runs there and seen the compassionate and loving way that he does that. So, Ed, thank you so much for being here. We're so grateful for you bringing up this difficult topic that we're going to talk about. And I just invite you to say anything else that you would like to say by way of introduction before we get into your story.
Thank you, Claire. That was a lovely introduction. Yeah, like I'll obviously get into the recovery fully soon. Like my main symptoms were shoulder pain, but there's some other dotted ones that I'll mention because I think it's important to know that it's not just that for a lot of us. Um, Other than that, I work for this lovely charity called Health All Round up in Southwest Edinburgh, and we can deliver this work for free. And that was the way I wanted to pass the work on, if it's possible. Like that's a real gift for me to be able to pass it on for free. So looking forward to getting into it.
Thank
Uh,
you, Ed. Thanks so much. So you mentioned that you recovered from, I think your main system was debilitating, persistent shoulder pain. And of course, you used mind-body approaches. Can you start by telling us just a little bit about the symptoms, how they came on, when that started, and how that affected your life?
so yeah, like the place I want to start today is just kind of when symptoms actually started for me, which like I was around 17. I was 17. I just passed my driving test a month prior, and it was a cold November night. The road had just been gritted, and I just came way too quickly around the corner and headlonged the van, going pretty quick. Um, I managed to walk out of the crash. It seemed like I'd got very lucky, like I hadn't had any broken bones, I hadn't had any severe injuries, it felt like. Um, I remember being incredibly scared and kind of not really understanding what had happened, like in a state of shock in a police car. The police were very nice to me, actually. They were very, very good to me. And all the people I saw were very good to me about that. But kind of after the aftercare I had from the car crash was very limited. My parents were super busy. They didn't really know what to do with the trauma of it. I didn't know what to do with the trauma of it. I had no tools. I just started to get this niggling shoulder pain. It wouldn't be all the time, but it would be flaring up at certain times, like flaring up with stress. Obviously, driving a car again, it was flaring up for me. Um, it, yeah, like ride. I remember distinctly riding mopeds. I was riding a lot of moped. I went traveling for a year and was riding mopeds in Asia a lot, and that was really triggering for me. I was having pain the whole day and not really mentioning it to my friends. So it kind of started a cascade of symptoms. But then they kind of were manageable. I wouldn't have called them chronic at the time when I was experiencing them. Um, but then when I was 19, I just moved to uni and I was in the first term of uni, and my parents went through a divorce, which completely rocked my world emotionally. And the symptoms just absolutely blew up. Like it was remarkable shift that I didn't notice at the time relating to emotions, as quite often we don't. But I just like shoulder was on fire, I was getting back pain, sciatic pain, tinnitus, insomnia, depression, anxiety, just like a massive explosion of symptoms. And to be honest, I spent most of my time just lying on the floor for a lot of months post that. Just lying there, kind of processing, not really understanding what was going on with me. Um, so that was kind of like the real start of what I would call chronic.
Did you relate the symptoms back to the car accident at that time, or were you not thinking they were related?
Yeah, I was kind of pinning him back on that, even though I hadn't been as bad. Like I was like, oh, something must have happened in the car accident, even though they've said I'm okay. Like I've been
Yeah.
checked. So yeah, that was kind of my reasoning at the time. and was just like, oh, it must have just spread. Like I must have done something. Like I've gone skiing or like that's kind of the way this works. I see for myself and others that we kind of link back, even if the link doesn't make that much sense. Like that's kind of what I was looking for. I was looking for anything physical to explain it, because yeah, I had no understanding of emotions. I'd never been taught, so I didn't really understand that. Like I even remember going to a counselor right after. And they were like, "Oh, how are you?" And I was like, "I'm just fine. I'm fine." And they like explained what the day was like. I was like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm still like playing tennis occasionally and doing my thing, going to uni." And they're like, "Oh yeah, well you probably don't need counselling." And I was like, "Ah, that's some very strong masking. I had no idea what was going on." Um, so I obviously did the medical route when I had these symptoms, like in the first 6 months. So went to the GP, got MRIs, got X-rays on the shoulder. Like that was what was giving me the most amount of pain. Um, and they diagnosed bursitis for me, shoulder bursitis. Um,
Yeah.
and they gave me an injection, but all the injection did is move the pain over to the left shoulder, for me. And then the pain came back in the right after the numbing had stopped. So then the pain
Yeah.
had spread from the injection, which I just put to overuse. That was my explanation for myself at the time, and that was what people were telling me. So I just was like, oh, it must just be overuse, like I'm compensating. Um, and then all I was offered was meds. So I quite quickly came out of the medical system, to be honest. My trust was broken quite quickly by that injection not working. Um, then I tried all of the other stuff that I'm sure everyone here, or most people here with chronic pain has tried, like endless physio, chiropractors, osteopaths, massage, everything physical, Pilates, stretching, yoga, just like bombarding the physical therapies, spending thousands of pounds, thousands of hours as well, just doing these things over and over again. But like it would be that weird cycle of I would go into a new therapy like, oh, osteopath, that's going to be the thing. You go in, a lot of hopes built up, maybe a day, you get a day, I got a day of relief, and then the day passed and it was back just as bad as it was, and then the hope was lost. So it was even worse. So I was despairing about this was never going to get better. And I was told by lots of people it wasn't going to get better over the complementary medical route. Like they couldn't understand what was going on for me. They just put it down to impingements and stuff like this. There wasn't anything obvious. And that's a hard thing to hear. Like this was like I was 19, 20. This is a young point in life to be told that you're going to have pain forever. Um,
Think it's
so,
very hard to hear at any point, but
yeah.
especially a young person at the start of your life. I certainly recognize the experience of getting excited about the next thing, thinking that was going to help me, and then the crushing disappointment. So after
Yeah.
alternative things that you looked at, what happened after that?
Yeah, well, life tended just to get a lot smaller. Like at the start, I was playing tennis and running and stuff like that, but that progressively got more painful for me, and I progressively got more scared of it. So then it kept on getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Um, I was like using a lot of, like I was partying a lot. Like instead of taking pain meds, I was using cannabis to try and like manage my pain, which was not like at the time it felt smart. Looking back, it was not very smart. It was just someone desperately trying to cope with what was going on to them. And then, but through all of this, I still had this belief that I was chill, I was happy. Like these, like weird, like my life wasn't matching up with how like the internal perception of self was. Which I just, yeah, that was quite a big insight for me in the end. And then eventually, after 8 years of this, I hit rock bottom. I was living with my dad, in a rural village. There was no one my age. I had nothing really to do. I just yeah, felt very stuck and very low. And there's a very distinct thought I had when I was there because I wasn't doing very much. All I was doing was walking the dogs and being on Reddit, basically. That was my life. My life had got that
Oh,
small. Um, then I had a thought if I had children, I wouldn't be able to lift them up or play with them.
oh,
And that really was like, that opened up the door to be like, oh God, like that's horrible.
mhm.
Like, what a horrible thought. Then I finally looked at the Dr. Sano book that I'd saved a year earlier, that I'd said it was absolutely garbage and useless, and obviously didn't apply to me. Like I think it took me getting really low for me to actually want to. look at it basically. Um, and
I
then,
think
yeah,
if I'd known your story lasted 8 years of suffering and your life getting so small, Ed, I had forgotten that part of it. And gosh, it's so touching, this thought that you wouldn't be able to pick up your future children. And then you got to this moment, which I think we often call the gift of desperation. And you remembered this book. You'd looked at it before and discarded it.
yeah, basically, yeah, the mind body prescription. I'd seen it on Reddit and just thought that's bullshit. Like that's definitely pseudoscience.
Common reaction, yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So then, yeah, like it took me being at rock bottom that I just was like, I'll try anything. I'll try emotions. Why not try emotions? Maybe there's something in there. And it really connected. Like it was the first thing that made a lot of sense to me. So I devoured the book really quickly. Had a pain-free day literally the next day after reading it. So that was a massive amount of evidence for me. Um, so like I was out playing tennis literally the same day, which I don't recommend to everyone, but for me that just felt like body's fine. Why would I not just go and do it?
Just
Um,
for those who are not familiar, Ed, with Dr.
sure.
Sarno or what's in that book, and we're going to collate all these resources for people to get after the session. Can you just summarize what you got from reading that book and how you connected to
Yeah.
emotions from reading it?
Like like a few key insights. Like one is the body's okay, my body's okay. Like that was like the probably main insight. But then just like describing all the ways of like repressing emotions and how that shows up in like perfectionism or being good or being conscientious. And I was like, like I'm all of those things. And then like having big life events. Like it was very obvious for me. It's not for everyone, but for me, it was very obvious that once I actually took the time to look back, it suddenly was like, like these happened at the time my parents got divorced, which was really hard for me. And it had nothing to do with my body. Like it was, well, nothing to do with my body, but nothing to do with like a structural cause anyway. Like there was stuff happening, but then it started to kind of click for me. Like that lens really helped. Like the case studies I really like resonated with. So yeah, then I started realizing I have a lot of anger, grief, fear, shame to start processing, especially from those two big life events I've mentioned. Like those were really, I really needed to process them.
Yes. I similarly started by reading a book of Dr. Sarno, and I think I took from it that one, it was a validation that my symptoms were real because he certainly wasn't saying they were in your head, but he was putting forward his observation from all his patients that what can be at the root of symptoms can sometimes be the emotions that we repress. And like you, I saw myself in some of what he calls personality traits we might call coping mechanisms now, such as perfectionism, being good and liked as a way for feeling safe um, in the world. And then you started to look at those emotions as a result
Yeah.
of reading the book, did you? Well, you went out and played tennis the next day, first of all. But
Yeah, no, I did. No, I did. Like that was my main practice, to be honest. Like when we're talking practices, like the journaling was my main practice, like very Sano-esque, which is just free lists of stresses, present, present, past, like coping strategies, personality traits that we use that cause us stress. And I just started going through the list and ticking them off every day as well. Like that just felt so important to me. I also had the gift of time. Like I was living with my dad. There was not much going on for
yeah,
me. I had a lot of time on my hands. So I was like, this might work. And also, perfectionist tendencies, throw myself wholeheartedly into anything I find myself doing. There was no chance I was going to do it half-assed, um, which comes with its own stuff.
yes,
So yeah, like,
absolutely.
and I'm lucky that emotions started flowing quite quickly for me as well. Once I kind of realized and I started writing about it, that method was really helpful for me. Like writing really helped me connect internally. And I realized how angry I was at certain things. Like that was baffling to me. I hadn't felt anger in like, I couldn't remember feeling anger since being a little kid, really. It'd been a long time. Um,
I think in Dr. Sarno's book, he puts a lot of emphasis on repressed anger. And I think what we've learned from working with many people in our own experiences, everyone is different. But you mentioned in your list of emotions shame, and I do want to kind of hone in
Hmm.
on that as what we're going to focus on in particular. And we want to talk a bit about that. And that can be a pretty difficult one, I have to say, a sensitive topic to talk
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, it's very sensitive. Like there's a reason it doesn't get talked about, isn't it? Very much. Like it's uncomfortable. Um, yeah. Like the reason I wanted to bring shame is because it's alive for me right now. Like it's very alive for me right now. Like it's was alive back then too, but it's just been a topic that I've been thinking about a lot. And I'd kind of like to speak a little bit about shame, just not relating to my stories directly first, just so we're all on the same page really about what shame is and how it feels, which I'm sure we've all experienced it 'cause it's universal, so we know how it feels.
Yeah.
But like the Brené Brown is one of my favorite people at the moment with shame research. She calls shame the fear of not being worthy of love and connection. That to me is so tied in with neuroplastic symptoms. Like so much of neuroplastic symptoms are caused by relational conflicts or conflicts in relationships where we didn't feel seen or loved or we couldn't be authentic. So that generates shame for us alongside other emotions. And then shame leads into shame's such an intolerable feeling. It's so painful to hold. It's really hard to hold yourself that it sets our nervous systems into stress. Stress leads to symptoms. Maybe we get ashamed about having symptoms and then we get caught back into another one of those cycles that's always talked about in this work, like pain fear cycles, shame pain cycles. Like these are cyclical processes. And I just wanted to share a bit about the difference between like, because guilt and shame I find quite confusing sometimes, how to separate them. Um, but I'd like to just use an analogy to separate what's the difference between guilt and what's the difference and shame. So, like, imagine that you're a kid and you're walking with your mum in the supermarket. Your mum's giving you the milk to hold. She's giving you that big responsibility. But you've just seen a toy that you love in the supermarket. You've run over and you've been super excited about seeing it. And you've managed to drop the milk and it's exploded on the supermarket floor. Now, your mum comes over to you and she says, "Oh, like that was a bit of a silly mistake. Like maybe we don't run with the milk next time, but it's okay. Like it's okay. We'll get someone over to clean it up. But maybe let's talk about that. Let's not run with the milk next time." That's kind of guilt. Say you drop the milk and your mum comes over and goes, "Oh, you bad boy, you're stupid. You're like, how could you do that? How could you do something so stupid? You're stupid." Like that's a very different kind of feeling. The first one's kind of like it's giving you feedback on your action. The second one's giving you feedback, criticism of your being. Shame's about how we are. It's not about what we're doing. So that's kind of the difference I like to think of. If there's shame about, it's like I'm bad rather than like I've done something bad. Um, so just to say that might be helpful for people to
It's
separate.
it's helpful for me, Ed. I mean, I'm a person, people may relate to this, who can't remember many things from their childhood. So the list of childhood things is kind of difficult. But one of the memories I have is coming out of the local shop, carrying a bottle of blackcurrant squash, and I dropped it and it smashed. And I can remember that vividly. And I don't think that my mother shamed me, but I had this level of, because money was tight, right? I can still remember how much it cost, 28 pence. And, this feeling around that loss in that innocent situation. And I think maybe that's guilt in the way that you just explained it. But I think it was the lack of connection with my mother, any conversation about it, which meant it's lived in me for another 50 years
Oh,
of
like,
suffering about it. And I guess what we're saying is to the extent that we don't give these feelings a voice, that's what can we're shoving down and is creating these pathways in our brain that pain replaces not wanting to feel that, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
So it
Like
was
it's not,
very real for me and you telling that story. So, but maybe
yeah,
you
like
could
it.
share what you're willing to about how it kind of showed up with respect to your own symptoms.
Yeah. No, I definitely am. And like, yeah, it's showed up in like a myriad of different ways, to be honest. Like, there's first of all just shame about having symptoms. Like that's like a really important thing. Like, especially as someone who now identifies as recovery or like recovering, like there's a shame around having symptoms and not being a perfect example. So I shame myself. That's a self-shame. No one says that it has to be, but there's a shaming that goes like, oh, like I'm bad because I have symptoms. And I had that during my journey as well, because I was young and I was around lots of university students who were all kind of living their life normally. Like someone said it was all in my head. Like that was like a lot of shame for me of being different and being broken, like feeling broken in comparison to people. Like to me, that made me feel like I'm broken, not that something's happening to me. Um,
Yeah.
so that's still something I'm still tackling at the moment, to be honest, like unraveling that because it's very painful, basically. Um,
But you shifted from, I think, if I hear you right,
mhm,
Ed, from having not being conscious of the shame to now being aware of
mhm.
the shame, which gives you a certain facility to work with it.
Absolutely. Like it all starts with awareness, even though it's super uncomfortable being aware of shame because it's such an uncomfortable emotion to hold. Um, like it's really difficult. So that's kind of one aspect I wanted to talk about is the shame around just being having symptoms or having had symptoms. Um, the like the rounded traumas, like there's a lot of shame around like I was driving the car. Like it was
Yeah.
my fault that the car crash happened. Like I was the one who caused like I caused the accident. Like it's really hard to reconcile when we feel like we've caused like or caused a dangerous situation or caused our own pain. I found that very difficult to reconcile with not causing myself self-shame. And that's been something that's needed to be worked through the journey because that then leads to lots of self-shaming basically. Or I see shame. I can easily be shamed by other people because I feel like they're saying that I'm bad or I've made a mistake and that means I'm worthless. So
Yeah.
that very quickly drives into that. And that leads to symptoms for me. As soon as I go into that state, anxiety starts, maybe some pain might start, and I go, whoa, the nervous system is like super activated right now. So that was another thing that is important. And like, there was important details around the car crash when I came out. The first thing a teacher said to me that was my fault, for example. Like these messages stick with us, and it stuck with me. Like that's still such a vivid memory for me. These really heightened states. Um, so. Yeah, that's kind of like a few examples of how it's showing up, and like it still shows up now of like not doing the work perfectly or not like still getting like trickles of anxiety or whatever. Like that still sometimes shows up for me. Um, the thing is, it's such an intolerable feeling. I want to go hide.
Yes. That's
You
what
know,
it makes
like the
me
last
think
thing I
of.
want to do
That
is go and
I
see
just
people
don't
up.
want to deal with it. Yeah.
I just want to go, oh God, get me away from this. Get me away from this. And then the pain goes and goes, oh, this is good attention seek. Like this is a good way to get your attention off this. Um,
Yes, I think that's the signal to me. If I want to run from it, then it often can be shame. And
mhm.
in terms of recovery, I know I felt a lot of shame around it. I was doing all the tools. I was journaling, I was meditating. I understood the science. I've read every book about that. I understood it so well, but it took me a very long time to heal. It was up and down. It wasn't all terrible, but I realized later I felt so much shame around that. And I think I
Mhm.
was using the tools without any compassion for myself in
Yeah.
going through that experience.
Yeah, which is huge, isn't it? Like sometimes it's not in the what we're doing, it's in the how. That's often like that often is a part of life and like yeah, using the same like self-shaming patterns that a lot of us picked up. I know I picked up. Like if I go into smack tracking like I'm gonna fix myself or I'm worthless, guaranteed more symptoms. Guaranteed. Like it's not gonna work well. Or even journaling, like journaling away and being like, this is to fix myself. I need to be fixed. I'm broken. This I like that kind of messaging is reinforcing danger for me and it
Yes.
reinforces symptoms. So part of the process has been stepping away from that a bit and noticing when that's in the driving seat, through meditation or talking with people, because shame can't survive when it's brought to light. So yeah, that's where I feel like I'm at with shame. And I think it's important to notice, like, in my view, a lot of the coping strategies, like the perfectionism, goodism, that kind of stuff, is a product of the shame I was feeling. Like, I'm ashamed to be myself, so then I'm going to put something on for people because that feels safer than
Yes.
feeling how intolerable it is to go, like, I'm going to be authentically myself and I might be rejected, or I might be upset someone, or they might perceive me as bad. So then all these things come out and cope. Um,
Yeah. What I really relate to, Ed, is how it's an ongoing exploration for me anyway, and I think for you, of shame. So even though now we're not living with daily symptoms, we might occasionally get some thing that it's kind of the work of sort of excavating shame is never over. I recently read a thing that speaks to what you're saying about the annoying paradox that the more we try to fix ourselves with these things, the less effective it works, is that we bring self-compassion, which can be very alien to people, to be kind to themselves in the way that they are to others, but we do it because we're suffering, and we don't do it to get out of suffering, to fix ourselves again, but rather because it hurts.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a subtle difference. It's a subtle difference, isn't it? Like it's kind of an energy. I know for me, I can tell it in the energy. So,
Yeah.
um,
And just as I'm very conscious of the time and I
mhm.
want to bring in some of the others, but when we talked before, another thing you mentioned that I think is really important is about taking this into your life. And it's not a matter of simply journaling and meditating and even realizing things about yourself and making those connections, but taking them into life that's made the difference for you.
Absolutely. Like, yeah, yeah. Like I have taken it into my life. Like I'm a big advocate in getting off the cushion, like bringing the practice off the cushion. I said a lot of meditation practice. Like if you just meditate for an hour a day or journal for 20 minutes a day, that's great. Like good, like that's amazing practice. Like kudos. Like that takes work, but also there's then the other 23 hours, you know? So yeah, like the things relating to emotions that I've really had to be strong with has been, wow, speaking up for myself. Like actually
Yeah.
noticing when I need something and speaking it. Oh my gosh, that's so hard. That's so uncomfortable. Like it's not easy for me to do that. Sometimes I'm not even noticing what I need. So saying it out loud can be like, oh my God, is this okay? And then normally the people I'm around, I'm lucky I've surrounded myself with good people. Are like, oh yeah, that's fine. Like we'll go and do that. I'm like, oh, okay. That didn't go as badly as I anticipated. So the more I've done that, the more I've taught my system that it's safe. Doesn't mean it's still not uncomfortable for me. It is like this work is like we're pushing at the edge a bit here. So that's been more like setting boundaries with family, friends, um, like part of this journey for me. Like me and my mum were having a lot of tension because of the divorce, and we couldn't quite figure it out when we were talking to each other. So I made some calls to not talk with her and have it on my own way just for a few months, and that was really hard for me, like really painful. But then it gave me some space to actually work through the emotions, calm the nervous system a bit before then we re-entered space together and we could have the difficult conversations to talk through how we needed to be. Because every time I went to see her, I was getting fatigue symptoms. After like half an hour, I was getting tired. Like so bone tired. And as soon as I left, I'm like, oh, I'm like so energized. Like 10 minutes later, like that, the mind, body, and work, like the nervous system was telling me something wasn't right. So that was a part of the work as well, like having these conversations. And then there's a few other things which are important. Like I went and actually got therapy with someone else. I did all this work alone. I needed to go and do some of the relational work with someone. I'm lucky enough that I could afford that. I know not everyone has that privilege, so but I was lucky enough to afford that. So then I could work through some of the stuff that I needed to in a dynamic. That was important for me. And then carrying out into life finding joy, finding play, like how much of that had been lost for me. Even though it's scary, like I don't want to be bad at stuff in front of others. The perfectionist screams at that, but I need to go and do it so I can enjoy my life. Um, like if I have a symptom when I'm doing it, it's not such a big deal anymore. Like if I'm going dancing, like that's something I love that I'm terrified of, and I feel a bit sick while doing it, it's still worth going for me. It's still worth it. Like I'm like, okay, I feel a bit like my body's a bit tight, but now I'm dancing with people and I'm enjoying myself and like connecting. So that's kind of been a few of the insights that have shifted and how it's been brought in to my life.
I'm really in awe of all the work that you've done and continue to do. So many of these things, even without the physical symptoms, feel so hard. Speaking up for myself, setting a boundary, being afraid to look bad at doing anything. That was how I came to give up everything I wasn't immediately good at as a kid. But I'm sure we will hear a lot more about your story and how you live now and the things you did. But I wanted to bring in the others from the panel, if that's okay.
There's so much to relate. I think I can see how much everyone and many people are relating to what you've shared, Ed, and there's just so much to relate to. And for me, shame for me. So I was a big feeler when I was a child. I was really sensitive. And the thing rejection sensitive, and I was really quirky and enthusiastic about stuff. So that quite often sort of put me in a position where if I was playing a game, I would take it too far, or I would be the one, we were all doing something naughty, I would be the one that would get caught because I was so clumsy, and it was so painful to me to sort of get into trouble in that way, that shame sort of acted like a protector. So I would end up, if I felt like I'd said too much or been too loud, shame would come in, and in a way it sort of kept me small. It kept me, and I realize now I was very neurodivergent, and I didn't know that at the time, of course, but shame was a real companion that was like, oh, don't be so big, don't be different from anyone else. So anytime I did anything that was kind of different or quirky, shame would come in, but and so there was a lot of kind of keeping me right. And another way I sort of avoided some of those big emotions was by just making sure I never got into trouble and just being like this perfect child. So I did well in school. I became an overachiever. I was just always very easy. And I remember shame, I sometimes describe shame as something that often people put on us. So for example, shame-based parenting, like the silent treatment, I'm so disappointed, or like a teacher, I can't believe you did that. I remember once making a mistake in school and the teacher saying, if your mother knew that you had done that, that's shit. It's like someone handing you, I call it the jacket of shame, handing you the jacket of shame, and you just put it on. Like, oh my God, I'm bad. We sort of internalize that. And so, yeah, I had a sort of lifelong kind of relationship with shame. And that being good all the time and masking that you kind of talked about, Ed, it 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 sort of separated me from sort of like who I really was. And so when I became an adult, I was in a really unhappy marriage. I was really stressed at work. And I wasn't really feeling those feelings. I was just stuffing them down. I didn't want to sort of make a big deal of the fact that, my marriage wasn't working. I just pretended everything was fine, and then it sort of collapsed with these, basically my body. I knew my body was saying things aren't okay, and I just ignored it for ages, and then basically until I couldn't anymore. And I really came to understand that my body was expressing my distress. And so I I had these 8 years of kind of like you described, trying everything, trying to fix it. And during those 8 years, I became more and more distant from my body because I was seeing it as this sort of like enemy that I was trying to fix. And for me, the way out was And loads of people told me about the mind-body approach, and I was so insulted because I thought, I'm a stoic person. Like I'm not, there's nothing wrong with my emotions. How dare you? But I mean, I didn't have a relationship with anger. And I remember having counselling because my husband had an affair and it was a horrible breakup. And I had this counsellor and she said, how do you feel about that? And I just kept telling her the story. Well, this is what happened. And then, he did that and this is what happened. And she said, but how did you feel? And I was like, well, this is what happened. She's like, I'm not asking you what happened. I'm asking you how you feel. And she actually one day brought a feelings wheel. And I used the feelings wheel. And I remember she went, how did you feel? And I looked at that wheel. And in my mind, I went, well, how would someone feel if that had happened to them? And I picked anger because I thought that was probably the appropriate feeling to feel. And I said anger. And she was like, yeah, really good. But I didn't feel it. So for me, I used Curable to recover, which is an app. And all my physical symptoms went away. But I had this massive upsurge of emotion. And I suddenly was feeling all these emotions that I hadn't been feeling before. And for me, my seizures, so I had FND, and basically my brain shut me down. And then I was having these seizures as a way of kind of expressing what was going on for me. And my way out was very much reconnecting with emotion. Um, and and I did that because I realized I was having these feelings that, like Ed, like everything you said, Ed, I wasn't expressing myself. I was saying yes to everything because I couldn't say no. I had no boundaries. Um, and for me, I always say there were three things. There was connecting again with my body in a different way. So learning to relate to myself differently, not through fear, but through safety. And then expressing all of the things I had sort of, tucked away, not just feeling them, but actually resolving them, expressing them, learning from them. And then paying attention to what my body was trying to tell me. I was in an unhappy marriage, I was in a bad situation at work, and there was a message there. So like those were the three things. And one of the main things that helped me was well, two things. Nicole Sachs' journal speak. So I did that a lot. And Howard Schubiner's Unlearn Your Pain. And that was a book where you actually, and he's got a new version, which is like this one. And I'm not on commission. And but the old one was a workbook, and it basically asked you, it's quite similar to the journal speak process, and it asked you to go back and look at the stressors in your life. And I realized, like I always said, I didn't have any stressors in my life. I had a brilliant childhood, and I mean I did. But for me, stressors were things like getting into trouble from the teacher. Um, and actually when I looked at it, all of these things that had happened to me in life that I just got on with because I'm so practical and I'm so stoic, and I could look back and see actually that they were really stressful. So I think my idea of like how I interpreted stress, so like exam stress, school stress, uni stress, doing well, succeeding, that was my flavor of stress. And so yeah, reconnecting with emotions has been a really big thing for me. And I still, like you, Ed, I still have a real journey with shame. I'm still on my journey with shame. It's still a big part of um, what I experience, but I've learned a lot about it, and yeah, got a lot more self-compassion now.
You express it so beautifully, Louise, the way you talk about it. And I think so many people will be relating to those things. I know I am, that it's both the major events in life and also what, when we first look at it, can seem quite mundane. But when
Mhm.
you say getting into trouble, I get a
Yeah.
physical
Like, oh,
response to
yeah,
that. So thank you for sharing. I just wanted to move on to Jean, if you don't mind, because we want to leave plenty
of
of
course.
time for questions and just hear Jean's reflections on what Ed and Louise have shared.
I think there's so much in common. It's quite incredible, actually. And I think in both stories, like I hear, relationships and relationship issues, and how we relate to other people and how we learn to be, because of, our experience of other people. And personally, in terms of shame, I think it's been a journey. I didn't realize that was there at all, actually. And I think I really related to what Ed was saying about masking. And I had not realized that I was like a master at masking my feelings. And I remember when I was younger and I had this panic attack, and then I got checked by a doctor, and the doctor, obviously there was nothing wrong with me, right? So the doctor, my friend was there with me for emotional support, and then the doctor asked me like, "Oh, are you anxious? Are you an anxious person?" And my friend, and at the very same time, my friend said, "No, he's the most like coolest person in the world. Like he's really like so stoic." And then I was like, "Yes, yes, I am anxious, I think." So, but I think in terms of shame and how it related to my own story, I think it linked to the coping mechanisms that we were talking about, the people pleasing, the perfectionism, that kind of stuff. I think that these are coping strategies, so we don't have to feel shame. Because I mean, like, if I say no to someone, what sort of person am I? And I think I quickly realized that I was judging myself as being selfish for putting my needs over other people's needs, or that if I didn't do things perfectly, then I was like a failure, or someone bad in some ways. And I think that kind of like really resonated with me to realize that the coping mechanisms that we put in place are really there to protect us from feelings. Um, and really realizing very quickly, like in a therapy session, like say same thing as Louise, like I was asked like, how do you feel about this? And um, I was good at naming emotions, but I was not feeling them at all. And when I was asked to connect to my body to feel them, I, it was just kind of radio silence. I was like, I, I just don't know. Um, and really, when my symptoms came on, I thought it was just like Ed. He was like, okay, I did something because I do capoeira, which is like a Brazilian martial art, and I thought I hurt myself there, because obviously that's the link that I made. The following day it was really hurting, and I just thought, oh, maybe I hurt myself there. And but what I had not realized was that basically my circumstances were pretty difficult at the time. I was going through a divorce, um, and I remember going to see an osteopath because I tried all the things as well, you know. So and I went to see an osteopath, and it checked me, and it was like, I can't really find anything, you know, specific, but and I'm not saying this is the case for everyone, but is there anything going on in your life at the moment? And that's when I kind of made the link with the divorce. And I just said like, oh, well, I'm getting divorced. But I was just like, that makes no sense though. Like, how can a divorce cause sciatic pain? To me, that just made no sense whatsoever. I was just like that. I mean, he's really nice, but I mean, come on, this is nonsensical kind of thing. And I have like a really kind of skeptical, critical mind. So your story really needs to add up before I believe it. And but I listened to a podcast on emotions, and someone mentioned The Way Out from Alan Gordon, and that's kind of like when I started kind of making links and understanding the neuroscience, and that really nourished that, kind of skeptical part of me. Um, and then that's when I started kind of, researching and reading more, and reading, Sarno, reading Shubina's Unlearn Your Pain. These things helped. And I tried the journaling, and I have to say, it did nothing for me. I think it's more effective now for me, but I think at the time, because I was so cut off from my emotions, I could see that I was writing a letter, an unsent letter to, because this is one of the techniques, to my dad. And it was a very angry letter, but I was just like, yeah, but I don't feel the anger. And also I feel nothing about having written that, which was very strange for me. And I was just like, I don't understand why I'm not connecting to those feelings. So it was kind of like a journey of like discovering feelings a lot for me and getting in touch with that and understanding that, there was a lot more to anger. There was also hurt behind it, and there was, a part of me that was kind of short-circuiting access to anger because it was too much for me. Um, but I think I discovered the Curable app as well, and I kind of started understanding that I ticked a lot of boxes in the ACEs, childhood, adverse childhood, what do you call it? Uh,
Events,
events.
adverse childhood events, yeah, ACEs.
Yeah. And so I ticked a lot of boxes, and I think in my mind I minimized my own story, and just thought, well, that's just the way it was. That's how my dad was. It was the 80s was one of them, which I think is funny now. But I didn't realize that I'd grown up like in an environment where my father was alcoholic and violent physically and verbally. And to me, that was the reality I knew, and I'd survived it. And I just thought, it's gone, it's in the past. I survived, kind of thing. Not realizing that this still impacted me now, as an adult, and that there were a lot of coping mechanisms. So the people pleasing, to avoid conflict, the perfectionism to make sure that I don't get noticed too much. I just do all the things just the way they need to be done so that I don't get in trouble. And understanding that that was also linked to those events. And that really kind of opened up like a whole new world for me. And I remember when things really started going really well for me, I think it's when I realized that I was in a therapy session and I was doing part works. I mean, the one of the techniques is like IFS, like internal family systems. And I was doing this with a therapist for me. And I just came out of it, and this kind of, I just felt like there was nothing wrong with me. And almost like it became like obvious that there was nothing to fix, that there was never anything wrong with me. And that was kind of like a big realization. And I remember it's Carl Rogers who said that there's like a very curious paradox. It's that when I accept myself, then I can change. And I think that's kind of when things started changing. And I think this is really related to shame for me, because I think a lot of the time I was very serious and not very joyful. And because I had to be to keep it together, and not realizing that joy was the medicine, like I read Sarah writing in the chat, and that when I'm joyful, I'm truly myself. And that was kind of like a realization. And then I started looking for things that brought me joy in my life in general, because I had no idea. I wasn't sure. Like, because they do something that's joyful. I have to think about this, because everything was just, work and achieving, everything is a project, you know, and and I think it was really nice to kind of go, actually, I don't have to do something. It does not need to be any other point in what I'm doing, but the joy that it brings me. And I think that I was like, wow, um, amazing. And now I just look for joy all the time. I'm just like, please bring me the joy. Like what, and I think like I find joy in connection with people, in the activities that I do, in nature a lot. Nature is like medicine for me and brings me so much joy. Um, And I think that that's kind of like made me realize that I don't need to be ashamed of where I am. I just need to be joyful. And that's really kind of what opened up, the full recovery for me.
Amazing, amazing, John. Great place to finish temporarily, to end with joy.
Writing poetry became a really important part of my recovery process. That was an unexpected joy that came from doing so much writing, is that I fell in love with words. And I often wrote, most of my writing happens when I'm the most emotional or having symptoms. For some reason, that's when I'm at my most creative. But I just wanted to share one with all of you because maybe this might touch something for you. Um, so this is called Courage and Sadness. Pain all day, uneasy, looking for a way out. Out of where, though? This existence, this mind, this life? Drawn into presence, another takes my wholeness in. The despair, the sadness, the anxiety. All was seen and welcomed. Allowed. I have permission. Permission to feel deeply. The richness of despair, the depths of sadness, the grip of anxiety. These human experiences. Not mine alone. What makes an act courageous? Keeping the heart open even in pain. Staying the path even while feeling lost. Being true to self. Revealing it to other. These small acts, these moments of a courageous heart, connect us into the love that is always there.
It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. An act of courage indeed.